In this video, we're going to carry on with our badass iOS style app with iOS style page transitions. And in the last video, we created an iOS style layout. We created dynamic global components for our pages, our page headers, and our page bodies. And we created our first child page with its own root and got this page to display with this nice slide in animation. And in this video, we're going to add some back buttons for our header so that we can get back to our parent page. We're going to add the parallax effect so that when we navigate to a child page, we can see the parent page slide in slightly to the left and go in a little bit darker that you can see here. We're going to add a grandchild page so that we can prove that this app can be as deep as we want. And we're going to add another section to our app, this questions section. And we'll find that when we add this section, we start to see transitions that we don't want to see. So we're also going to fix that. And we're also going to get our app to remember where we were so that if we're in a particular section and we go right down to, say, a grandchild page and we jump to a different section and jump back again, we go right back to that grandchild page instead of going to the root of that section. In this series, I'm documenting my journey creating a real-world Quasar framework app using Quasar 2 and Vue 3, and that's this app, Fudget 2. And this app will ultimately be deployed to the iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows app stores. Make sure you subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss any of the videos in this series. And if you didn't see the last video where we started building this iOS style app, you can find the link to the whole playlist in the description. Let's catch up on Fudget 2 in a couple of weeks, and we'll just get straight back to our iOS style app. So let's add some back buttons for our headers so that we can easily get back to our parent pages, because right now we have to click the browser back button, which isn't much fun. So let's add another slot to our header component so that we can easily inject these back buttons into any header we want. So I'm going to go to source and components and page header.vue. And we'll add another slot within this Q toolbar div. So we'll add a slot and we'll give it a name of, let's say, buttons-left, and save that. And if we jump to our child page, so pages, home, and child.vue, we should now be able to inject a button into our header. So we want to add a template, and we want to target the buttons left slot. And let's stick a Q button in here. So we'll add a Q button, and we want this to go back to our home page. So we'll set the to prop to /home. And we'll set the label to home and save that. And we can see that button on our child page, and it is taking us back to the home page. So let's improve the styles of this button. I'm going to add an icon to it. I'm just going to add a material icon, the chevron _left icon, to add a little chevron to point back to the previous page. And I'm going to set this to our primary color. So I'll set the color to primary. And I want this to be a flat button, so we'll add the flat prop. And I want it to be rounded. And I want it to be dense, so that it's a little bit smaller. And I don't want it to be capitalized, so I'll also add the no caps prop as well. And this is looking pretty good now. And since we're going to be using these back buttons all over the place, let's create a global component for it. So I'm going to duplicate page header. And this option is being added by the duplicate action extension. And we'll call this page header button back.vue. And I'll remove everything that's inside the template tag and just copy in this Q button. So we'll paste that there. And I'll change the name to page header button back and save that. Let's remove the to and label props, because we'll actually specify these when we use this component in one of our headers, and save that. And we want to make this a global component, so we'll add it to our global components boot file that we created. So we'll go to boot and global components.js, and we'll add it to this list. So we'll make the tag name page-header-button-back, and we'll update the path to page header button back and save that. And we should now be able to use this component without having to import it. So we'll jump back to our child page, child.vue, and we'll get rid of this QButton component and instead add a page-header-button-back component. We'll add our to prop, set that to /home, and add our label prop and set that to home and save that. And we can now see our button again. And it's successfully taken us back to the parent page. Our header title is no longer in the center, so let's fix that. So I'm going to jump to components and page header.view, and here's our title here. And Quasar does have a class of absolute center that we could use, and that does put it in the center. However, this class also puts it in the vertical center as well as the horizontal center. And we'll find on devices such as the iPhone 10, 11, 12, which have the notch at the top. On those devices, the height of the header will be increased, but we'll find that using this absolute center class, this title will be up in the vertical center of the header instead of at the bottom. So let's add our own CSS instead. So I'm going to add a class to this toolbar title of page-header-title and save that. And I'm going to jump to the CSS file in source, CSS and app.scss. Let's target our page header within this page selector. And then within that, we'll target the page header title class that we just created. And I'm going to set the position to absolute. And we'll set the left to 50%. And then we'll use transform to nudge this back to the left. So we'll set translate X to -50% and save that. And we want to make sure this is positioned at the bottom. So we'll set the bottom to 0 and save that. And that's a little bit too low down. So let's try bottom 10 pixels, maybe a little bit more. Let's try 12, save that. And this is still slightly off center. You can see this word is not quite in the center of this speaker here. And that's because there is some default padding on this. You can see it to the left there. So let's get rid of that by adding a class, one of Quasar's padding classes. So we'll set q-pl for padding left, and we'll set that to none and save that. And this title is now bang in the center, and it looks okay on both our home page and our child page as well. Let's improve our page transition and add the nice parallax effect. So if we look at the finished project, we can see our child pages have a little bit of drop shadow. You can see it just to the left of the page as it's sliding in. And also our parent page slides slightly to the left and gets a little bit darker as well. So first of all, let's add a shadow to our child pages, actually to all of our pages. And Quasar has some built-in shadow classes that we can use. If we go to the Quasar site, and this is the version 2 docs, and we go to style and identity and shadows, we have a bunch of shadow classes we can use here. And I'm going to use this shadow 4 class. So I'm going to jump to source, components, and page.view. And we'll add that class to our page. So shadow-4 and save that. And we can now see a little shadow on our child page as it's sliding in and out. However, this animation is a little bit too fast. If we jump to a different framework, framework 7, this framework accurately mimics the iOS app styles and also all of the transitions. And you can see on here, this animation is a little bit slower. And we can slow this animation down by adding a slow class to this transition like this. However, this is a little bit too slow, but we can override the default transition duration. So I'll remove those slow classes and the animation should be about 400 milliseconds. So what we can do is jump to our CSS file, source, CSS and app.scss, and we'll add some styles to the bottom here. I'll put a comment which just says transitions. And what we can do is override the transition of these two classes, slide in right and slide out right. So we'll target those two classes, slide in right and slide out right. And we'll set the animation duration to 0.4 seconds. And I'll save that. And this now looks about the same as the Framework 7 transition. And we might want to add some browser prefixes for this for older browsers. So I'm just going to duplicate this animation duration property 3 times. And we'll add the -WebKit prefix and the -Mozilla prefix and the -O prefix for Opera, and save that. Okay, so let's make our parent page nudge over to the left when we open up a child page, like you can see here. So I'm going to jump back to page.view. Now we don't want to nudge this page div over to the left, because remember, our child pages are being loaded within this div using this root-to-view component here. So if we nudge this div to the left, we will also nudge our child pages over to the left, which won't look very good. So instead, let's surround our default slot here in a new div, and we'll give this a class of page-nudger, and we'll move that slot into that div, and we'll nudge this div to the left instead. And I'll also give this a class of fit to give it 100% width and height. And now let's set up a class for nudging this div to the left. So I'll jump to app.scss, and just above our header styles here, we'll target this page nudger div, and we'll set up a class of nudge left, which we will add to this div when we want to nudge it to the left. We want to move it by about 60 pixels to the left, so we can use transform to do this. So I'll set transform to translate x and -60 pixels, and save that. And I'll just reload the page. And so if I just inspect this and look for that page nudger div, and that's there, so I'll select that, click on this class option here, and we'll add this nudge left class, and we can see it is nudging to the left. However, it's not currently going to animate, it's just going to jump straight to the left and straight back again. So let's add a transition to the page nudger div here. So we'll set the transition to transform, because we want to animate the transform property, and we'll set it to the same duration as our slide in and slide out animation, 0.4 seconds. Save that. And now if we add this class, we can see that it is animating. Now, typically in an iOS app, the parent page also gets darker as the child page slides in, and we can see that on Framework 7 here. You can see the parent page gets slightly darker. So let's add the same effect here. And we're going to do this using the after pseudo selector on this page nudger div. And we're going to use that to basically place a rectangle over the entire page and give that a semi-transparent dark gray color. So within this page nudger selector, we'll target the after pseudo selector. And we need to set the content property. We'll just set that to nothing. Set the position to absolute. And we'll set the width and height to 100%. We'll set the background color to RGBA, and we'll set that to 0 red, 0 green, and 0 blue. And then we'll add an opacity of 0.15 and save that. And we can now see this semi-transparent gray box. However, it's not covering the header and the footer. So let's add a Z index to that of, let's try 2000. And it's now covering the header. And actually, we don't want it to cover the footer. And currently this box will stop us from being able to click on things. So let's disable pointer events by setting pointer events to none. And we can now still click on buttons. And now we only want to set the background color on this after selector when this nudge left class has been added. So let's also target the after selector when the nudge left class has been added. And we'll copy this background property and paste it in there. And before the nudge left class has been added, we just want this box to be invisible. So set the opacity to just 0, save that. And now let's use the inspector to add this nudge left class to this page nudger div here. So nudge left. And this is looking pretty good. However, it is suddenly changing the background color on this after div. We want it to transition nicely. So let's also add a transition to this after selector. We want to transition the background property. And again, we'll set this to 0.4 seconds. Save that. And now if we add this nudge left class, we can see the page gets dark nice and smoothly. Okay, so we've set up our nudge left class and that's looking pretty nice. But we want to dynamically add this class to this page nudger div every time a child page is loaded within that parent page. And we're going to do this by hooking into the activated and deactivated hooks, which will be fired every time a page is loaded or unloaded. But in order for these hooks to work, we need to make all of our pages keep alive. So on page.view, I'm going to surround this component in keep alive tags like that. And we also want to make our root pages keep alive as well. So I'm going to jump to layouts and main layout.view. And we also want to make this root of view keep alive. So I'm going to copy this root of view component from page.view and paste that here. And just remove the transition component because we never need to make our root pages transition. And I'll save that and I'll save page.view as well. And just a little warning, adding these keep alive tags to our pages does create some issues with our hot reloading. So if I open up our home page in pages home.view, and if I make a change to this, I'll just change this text and hit save. And we look in the console, we see this warning here, unhandled error during execution of scheduler flush. This is likely a Vue internals bug. And then we also see this error as well. Type error, parent component.ctx.deactivate is not a function. And I have Googled this error and tried a few solutions and none of them worked. And I've also seen this issue in other Quasar projects when I've added keep alive tags to the main layout file. So I don't think this issue is anything to do with what we're doing here. And hopefully it's just a bug in the latest version of Vue, which will be fixed at some point. But if you do know of a way to get rid of this bug, then please let me know down in the comments. But let's get back to our nudge left functionality. So I'm going to jump to page.view and I'm going to set up a ref for dynamically adding that nudge left class to this page nudger div. So in our script section, I'm going to import ref from Vue, and then we'll add our setup function. And I'm just going to add a block comment. I'm just going to put nudge left class in there. We'll set up a ref called has active child page. And we'll set that equal to a ref with an initial value of false. And we'll save that. And we need to return this so we can use it in our template. So we'll return has active child page. I'm just going to add another block comment for this return statement. And I'll save that. So let's jump up to our page nudger div. And I'll split the attributes using the split HTML attributes extension. And we'll bind to the class attribute. And we'll add a class of nudge-left, but only when this has active child page ref is true. So I'll just put has active child page here and save that. And if we set this ref to true, then we can see the nudge left class has been added. And I'll set that back to false. Now let's add some onActivated and onDeactivated hooks, which can trigger an event from the child page to the parent page. And then we can listen out for that event on the parent page and set this has active child page prop accordingly thus adding or removing this nudge left class. So I'll jump back down to the script section and we'll add an onActivated hook, and I'll duplicate this and add the onDeactivated hook as well. And we need to import these from Vue. So I'll add those to this import statement. So onActivated and onDeactivated. And for now, I'll just log out activated in this activated hook and deactivated in the onDeactivated hook. And I'll save that, clear the console. And if we go to a child page now, we're not seeing that log. I'll just try reloading the page. And we can see activated being logged out on this main page. And if I clear the console and go to the child page, we see the activated log. And if we go back to the parent page, we see deactivated being logged out. So these hooks are now working, and we want to emit an event from these hooks and then listen out for these hooks on the parent page and then set this has active child page ref accordingly. So in this onActivated hook, we'll emit an event, and we'll emit an event called page activated. And we'll do the same thing in our deactivated hook, but we'll emit an event called page deactivated and save that. And so when the child page emits these events, we can listen out for them on the parent page. So we can listen out for these on this component here. So I'm going to split the attributes and we'll listen out for the page activated event. And so when that child page emits the event to the parent page, we want to set has active child page to true. So has active child page equals true. And then we want to do the opposite on the page deactivated event when the parent receives that. In that case, we want to set this to false. So I'll save that and see if it's working. I'll reload the page. We see some errors here. Emit is not defined. And that's because we need to pass the emit method into this setup function. So with the setup function, we always need to pass in our props as the first parameter. And then for the second parameter, we can pass in the context object, which contains emit and a couple of other things. And we can destructure this by just passing in an object here and the item that we want, which is emit. I'll save that and see if that's working. I'll reload. Click on this button and it's working. We can see the nudge left class is being added to the parent page whenever we load a child page. And then when we go back from the child page, that nudge left class is removed from the parent page and the parent page slides back over to the right and stops being dark again. Okay, so we're going to add a grandchild page to this child page in a minute. But before we do that, let's add some headings to our current pages. So I'm going to jump to home.view. And then above this button, I'm going to add a div with a class of text h5. And this is just one of Quasar's typography classes, which you can find on the typography page on the Quasar site. And I'll also add a class of q-mb for margin bottom -md to give this a bit of bottom margin. Let's add the text. Let's create a badass iOS app. Save that and reload the page. Let's copy this and add a heading to our child page as well. So I'll jump to pages, home, child.view, and we'll paste that above this paragraph and change the text to this is a child page. Save that. Okay, so let's add our first grandchild page. Okay, let's add a grandchild page to this app. So we'll add another child page to this child page so that we can prove that this app can go as deep as we want it to. So first of all, let's set up the root. So I'm going to go to source and router and routes.js. And here's our child page here. And we want to add a child page to this root. So I'm going to copy this children array here and paste it inside this child page root. And we'll change the path to /home/child/grandchild. And we'll set the path to the component to pages/home/grandchild.view. And we'll save that. And that's going to break our app because this component doesn't exist yet. So we'll jump to Pages and Home, and we'll duplicate child.view and rename it to grandchild.view. And we'll open that up. We need to update the back button. So this is going to want to go to the child page. So we'll set the to prop to /home/child, and we'll set the label to child as well. And we'll set the header title to grandchild. And we'll change the text in this heading to how deep is this. And we'll also update the name property to grandchild as well. And I'll save that. Let's make sure we can get to this page. So I'm just going to update the address bar to /home/child/grandchild. And yeah, we can get to that page and we can get back again. Let's add a button to link to the grandchild page on this child page. So we'll open up child.view and we'll add a button after this heading. And in fact, I'll just copy the button from the home page. So we'll copy this button here. And if you like, you can create a component for this button, but I'm just going to copy it. And we'll paste this onto child.view after this heading. And we'll set the to prop to /home/child/grandchild. Set the label to go to Grandchild Page and save that. And I'll just reload the app. Okay, we can see that button on the child page. And if we click it, we go to the Grandchild page. Okay, so this seems to be working okay with 3 levels. And just to make sure our pages are keeping alive properly, let's add an option group component to this Grandchild page where we can change the option and navigate away and come back to this page and make sure that the state is maintained. So I'm going to jump to the Quasar site and I'm going to go to View Components and Form Components and Option Group. And I'm going to jump down to Inline. We'll just copy the code from this option group here. So I'll click on View Source and we'll copy the Q option group component. We're going to add this to our grandchild. So we'll add it after this heading, paste that in there. And we'll also copy the script as well. So I'll copy this setup function and paste it after our name property. And we also need to import ref from Vue. So I'll copy that, paste it to the top of the script section and save that. Jump back to our app. And let's also add a bit of bottom margin to this option group. So I'll add a class of q-mb-md for a medium bottom margin. And let's update these options. So I'll set the first one, the first label, to kinda deep. Set the second option to very deep. And set the third option to so deep. And so I'll jump back to the home page, reload the app, jump down to our grandchild page, change the option. And if we jump back to the home page and then jump back down to the grandchild page, we can see the state of this page is maintained. And if you're enjoying this video so far, do me a favor and smash the like button and leave me a comment. Tell me what you're going to create with this iOS style app. Let's create a new section so that we can see if our app still works if we have multiple sections in the app. So I'm going to add a new navigation tab. So I'm going to jump to Source and Layouts and Main Layout.view. We're going to create a questions page with a list of questions. And then when we click one of those questions, it will load an answer page. So I'm going to duplicate this QRoot tab. And this is going to go to /questions. I'll change the label to questions, and I'm going to use another line awesome icon with the class LAS and then LA-question-circle, and I'll save that. And we can see that link. So let's create our root questions page. So I'll jump to the pages folder and create a new folder called questions. And let's duplicate home.view. So I'll right click that and copy it and then paste it in the questions folder. Rename it to questions.view. Let's change the title on this page to questions. And for now, I'm going to select everything inside this div with the padding. and I'll just put questions for now. Change the name property to questions as well. Save that. And let's set up our root. So we'll go to source and router and routes.js. We'll add a new root down here. So we'll set the path to /questions. And then I'll just copy this component property and change the path to pages /questions/questions.view and save that. And let's see if we can get to that page. Yeah, we can get there, no problem. So let's add a list of questions to this page. I'll jump to the Quasar site and view components and list items. I'm going to scroll down and I want something like this item here, except with a chevron icon over on the right. So I'll click on view source and I'll just copy the opening queue list component and this first queue item component and jump to questions.view and we'll paste that here. And we need to add our closing queue list tag. So I'll add that here, save that. And I'm going to replace this icon with a chevron right icon. So this queue icon here, I'll change the name to chevron_right, save that, reload the page, and I'll change this label to a question. So I'll change it to how do I do this, save that, and let's duplicate this queue item and change the text to how do I do that. And I'll split the attributes on these queue items and we'll add some to props so that they can link to our child page. So I'll set the to prop to /questions/answer and save that. And I want to have a separator between our items, so I'll also add the separator prop to the queue list and save that. And we are seeing that annoying hot reloading issue here. And again, if you have a solution to that, please let us know down in the comments. Let's add a heading to the top of this page. So I'll just open the home.view and copy this heading here. Paste it to the top of our queue list. And I'll just put the text, what is your question? ? Save that. And let's make sure these links are working. And it is going to /questions/answer, but we don't have a root or a page for that yet. So let's create that. So I'm going to copy the child page from our home folder and paste it into the questions folder and rename that to answer.view. And we'll update the back button so that it goes to /questions. We'll change the label to questions. And we'll change the header title to answer. And we'll change this heading at the top of our body to the name of one of our questions. So how do I do this? And we'll get rid of this button. And we'll change the name property to answer and save that. And let's set up our root. So we'll jump to routes.js and add our children array to this questions root. And we'll add an object here, and I'll just copy this path and component property, paste it in here, change the path to /questions/answer, and change the path to pages /questions/answer.view. Save that. Let's see if we can get to this answer page. And yeah, we can get there, no problem. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Now let's see if adding this section has messed up our app. Let's see if adding this new questions section has created any issues. So if we're on the root page of a section, so I'm on the home page here, and we jump to the other section, and we jump back again, we don't see any issues. We don't see any transition when we go from section to section, which is what you would expect in a mobile app. However, if we're on a child page within our section and we jump to the other section, then we see this unexpected transition, and we don't want to see that. If we're on a child page within our section and we jump to the other section, we shouldn't see a transition at all. It should just jump straight to that other section with no transition. So we need to make our transitions here on page.view conditional so that we only use these transitions, the slide in right and slide out right transitions, when we're navigating to a child page or a parent page in the current section. So first of all, let's set up a store for our app with a state property, a global state property for turning the transitions on or off. And you could use Vuex for this store if you want, but I'm just going to set up a Vue 3 composition API type store. So I'm going to create a new folder in the source folder called my store. And in there, I'll create a file called index.js. And we'll set up a reactive object for our state. So we'll call this const state, set that equal to a reactive object. And we need to import reactive from Vue. And let's set up a state property to determine whether transitions are enabled or disabled. So we'll call this use page transition, and we'll set that to false initially. And let's set up an object for our store, and we'll pass in this state object, and we'll export this store object. So we'll do export default store and save that. Now let's import this store into our page.view file. So we want to import store from source/my_store. And to make this available in our template, we need to return it. So we'll add this to our return statement here, store, and save that. And we should now be able to access this use page transition property at store.state.use page transition. So I'll jump back to page.view. And so we want to disable the transitions on this transition component when this property is set to false. And we can do this by using the CSS property on the transition component. So if this CSS property is set to true, then we use the transitions. And if it's false, then we don't. So what we want to do is only set this CSS property to true if this use page transition property is true. So we can just set this to store.state.use page transition and save that. And since this is currently set to false, we should now see our page transitions disabled. So I'll just jump to the home page and reload the app and jump to a child page. And yeah, we can see our transitions are currently disabled. We can still see a little animation when we go up to a parent, but that's just because of our nudge left class, so we don't need to worry about that. But our transitions for loading child pages are currently disabled. Let's set up a boot file so that we can hook into our router and disable or enable page transitions by setting this state property to true or false, depending on the route that the user is coming from and going to. So if the user is going to a page within the same section, then we want to enable transitions. But if they're going to a page that's in a different section, then we want to disable page transitions. So let's create this boot file. I'm going to kill the dev process and run Quasar new boot. And we'll call this router. And it's generated the file, and we need to add it to quasar.conf.js. So we'll open up quasar.conf.js and jump to the boot section and add our new boot file here, router, and save that. And let's jump to our new boot file, boot and router.js. And I'm going to steal some code from the Quasar site here. Oh, actually, I need to get the app running again with Quasar dev. So I'll get that running and I'll jump to the Quasar site, and we want to jump to Quasar CLI, which is here, and boot files. And I'm going to jump down to this router authentication section, and I'm going to steal this code here and paste that here. And I'm going to remove this store variable because we're not going to be using Vuex. And so this before each hook will be fired every time we change routes. And I'm going to change this to an after each hook, because with the after each hook, we don't need to worry about firing this next function, which will actually send the user to the route that they're going to. But we don't need to interfere with stopping the user from going anywhere. So I'm going to use an after each hook instead, which just has these two parameters, to and from, which give us information about where we're going to and where we just came from. So I'm just going to log out these two variables. So I'll log out the from variable and I'll log out the to variable as well and save that. Let's see if we can see these logs. And yeah, we can see the from object being logged out and the to object. So if I just clear this and jump to our child page, we can see the from and to objects being logged out again. So we can use this path property to figure out the route path of where they came from and where they're going to. And by route path, I mean, for example, /home is the route path of the home section, and /questions is the route path of the questions section. And if the to route path is different from the from route path, then we know they navigated to a different section, and we want to disable the page transitions. But if the from route path and the to route path are the same, then we know they navigated to a child page or a parent page within the same section, and we want to enable page transitions. So what we can do is use the split method to split this path into an array based on the / symbol, and from that array we can work out what the route path is. So I'm just going to adjust both of these console logs here, and I'll change this to from and to .path .split, and we're going to split this on the / character. So I'll save that and let's see what's being logged out. I'll just jump back to the home page, clear the console and jump to a child page. So we can see the route path is always going to be in the second item in this array. So if we jump to the questions section now, we can see the route path is always in the second item in this array. So to grab this second item in the array, we can just add brackets and 1 to the end of these split methods. So I'll save that, reload, and jump to a child page. And you can see when we jump to a page in the home section, from a page in the home section, then the result of what we're doing here and here is the same, home and home. But if we jump to questions, then we see questions here. So let's put these in some variables. So I'll remove the console logs and we'll put these in some variables. So we'll call this one from route path, and I'll add a comma here, and we'll call this one to route path. So if the from route path is different from the to route path, then we know they navigated to a different section. So I'll add an if statement here. So if the from route path is not equal to the to route path, then we know they navigated to a different section. And I'll just put a comment here to make this a bit clearer. So if we navigated to a different section, so in this case, we don't want to use page transitions, so don't use page transition. Otherwise, we do want to use page transition. So I'll just add a comment here, use page transition. So what we want to do here is set this state property to false if we did navigate to a different section, or set it to true if we navigated to a page within the same section. So we need to import our store here. So I'll add that here. So import store from source/my store. And so if we navigated to a different section, we want to do store.state.use page transition equals false. And I'll copy that. Otherwise, we want to set that to true to enable the page transitions. So let's save that and see if it's working. I'll jump to the home page And if we go to child pages and grandchild pages, and we go back up to the parents, then we see the transitions as we'd expect. But if we're on a child page and we jump to a different section, then we don't see the transition. So this is working as expected now. And let's just make sure it works okay if we add a link from one section to another. So I'll add another button on our home page here, which links to the answer page in our questions section. So I'll open up Pages, Home, and Home.view. And I'll duplicate this button here. And we'll set the path to /questions/answer. And I'll change the label to go to child page in another section. And save that. Reload the home page. Let's try this button. And yeah, that works no problem. Okay, so our transitions are now okay. If we navigate to a child page, we see the animation. And if we jump to a different section, then we don't see the animation. But we still have a problem here. So if I'm in the questions section and I jump down to the answer page, the child page, and I jump to the home page, then as a user, if I click on the questions tab, where do I expect to go to? Which page? Well, I expect to go to the answer page, right? I expect to go to the page that I was on the last time I visited the questions section. But that's not currently happening, because if I click on the questions tab, then we're back on the root questions page. So what can we do to fix this? Well, if I just open the main layout file, one thing we could do to fix this is to update these two props on our queue root tabs whenever we visit a child page within that section. So if we jump down to the answer page within the questions section, we could change this to prop on the queue root tab to /questions/answer, so that if we navigate away to a different section, then the link on this tab will be equal to /questions/answer. And when we click on it, we will go back to the answer page. So in order to make it easy for us to change these two props on our queue root tabs, let's set up a state property in our store for storing the data for all of our navigation tabs. So I'm just going to close everything and I'm going to jump to source, my store, and index.js. And we'll add a new property to our state called nav items, and this will be an array. And we'll set up an object for each nav item. So for each nav item, we're going to need a to property, an icon property, and a label property. So for the home tab, the to property is going to be /home, and the icon, I'll just grab that from main layout.view. Just copy this icon class, paste that in there, and then the label is just going to be home. We'll duplicate this object and add the data for our questions nav link. So the to is going to be /questions. The icon, I'll just copy that from main layout.view, paste that there, and the label is going to be questions. And I'm also going to add another property to these called root, which we're going to set to the root path of this particular section. So /home for the home link, and then we'll set this to /questions for the questions link. And we're just going to use this as kind of a unique ID for each item so that we can easily select the item that we want to update when we're changing routes. So I'll save that and I'll jump to main layout.view. And now we want to spit out these queue root tabs based on this nav items property in our state. So I'll delete the second one and I'll add a v4 directive. And actually we need to import this store to our main layout. So in our script section, let's import store from source/mystore. And we need to return that in our setup function. So return store. And this v4 loop will set this to nav item in store.state.nav items. and we'll set the key to nav item.root, and then we'll bind to the to prop and set that to nav item.to, and then we'll do the same for the label and the icon. So nav item.label, and then bind to the icon prop and set that to nav item.icon, and let's save that. And we can still see our nav items and they still seem to be working. Okay, let's jump to our router boot file, so boot and router.js. Okay, so let's update the to property on our nav item when the user navigates to a page that's in the same section. And in fact, I'm just going to add another comment here above this else, which says we navigated to the same section. So if they did navigate to the same section, then I'm going to fire a function called update nav item. We'll create that function here. So function update nav item. Okay, so what we want to do here in this function, so we have the to root path that the user is going to in this variable here. So we want to grab the corresponding nav item, which has the same root property, and then we want to update its to property to the path that the user is going to. So first, let's just grab the index of the nav item within this array. So I'll set up a const called nav item index, and then we'll use the find index method to get the index of the item in the array. So we can do store.state.navItems.findIndex, and we'll set up a placeholder. We'll just call that nav item, and we'll add our callback, and I'll just stretch this out a bit. So we want to find the index where this root property is equal to this to root path variable we have here. So we want to do nav item.root is equal to root path. Let's just log out this nav item index and save that. And so if I jump to a child page within the questions section, it's returning the index as -1, which means it didn't find it in the array. And I think I know why that is. I'm just going to log out this to root path variable. So to root path, and save that. And the reason it's not finding the corresponding item in the array is because this to root path variable doesn't have the / at the start. It's just equal to questions, whereas in this array we're looking for /questions. So let's just add the / to the from root path and the to root path. So I'll set both of these equal to a template string. We'll enclose this JavaScript in $ and curly braces. We'll do the same here. So $ and curly braces. And then we'll just add our / to the start, save that. And we now have the / in our to root path variable. So I'll get rid of this console log. And I'll jump back to the questions page and reload the page. And so if we jump to the answer page now, we can see it's found the correct index because our questions tab is the second item in the array, so item number 1. And if we're in the home section and we jump to a child page, the nav item index is set to 0, which is correct. So now that we have the index of the item that we want to update in the array, we can now change this to property on it. So I'll jump back to router.js and back to this update nav item function. And so now that we have the index, we can do store.state.navItems, square brackets, pass in the index, nav item index, and we want to update the to property. And we want to set that to the path that they're going to, which is going to be at to.path. So we can just set this to to.path, and I'll save that. I'll jump to the questions page and reload. I'm just going to open up Vue DevTools so we can look at our state. And this is the beta Vue DevTools. So if I go to main layout, we can see our state here and our nav items. And here's our question item. So right now the to property is set to /questions, But if I click on one of these questions and go to the answer page, we can see that it's updated to /questions/answer. And if I go back to the root questions page, the to property is set back to /questions again. So if I do jump down to the answer page, the link on this tab is updated to /questions/answer. So now if I jump to the home section and back to the questions section, we're right back on the child page. Okay, we still have an issue here. If we actually start our app on a child page, say this answer page, so I'll just reload the page at this route. And if we look at our state and our nav items, then the to property for our questions tab is still set to /questions and not /questions/answer. So this else block is not being fired if we start the app on a child page. And that's because our app always starts at the path / at this route here. So I'll just log out the from root path and the to root path, save that. So we can see our app always starts at the path /, which means this if statement will always be true when we first start the app, because our from root path is always going to be different to our to root path. So when we start the app on a child page, this if block fires, but this else block doesn't. So actually, let's just fire this update nav item whenever we change routes. So I'm going to move this out of the else block and just add a comment here, update to property on nav item whenever we change route. And I'll save that. So now if we start the app on the answer page and jump to the home section and jump back to the questions section, then we're back on the answer page. And let's just see what happens if we go to the home section and go to the deepest page, back to the questions section and the answer page. So even if we're on the deepest page of both sections, our tabs always go exactly where we expect to go. I'm just going to remove these console logs because we don't need those, and I'll save that. So this is looking pretty sweet now, but we still have a little bit more work to do on this. So for example, if you're on a deep child page within a section and you tap on the tab for that section, what do you expect to happen? You expect to go all the way back to the root page of that section. So we're going to make that happen, as you can see here in the finished project. So if I'm on the Grandchild page of the home section and tap on the home button, we go right back to the root of that section. And we're also going to create a composable function to make it really easy for us to go back to parent pages so that we don't have to specify all of the links on all of these header back buttons. We can just use our composable instead, and that will work out which page we need to go to. And we're also going to add this swipe to go back functionality so that the user can actually swipe to the right to go to the parent page so that they don't have to tap on this button in the header. And we're also going to prove that our app works with dynamic content by creating this images section, where each of these images will link to a detail page where we're loading in the image and this title dynamically. And we're also going to test the app on a mobile browser and fix any issues. And finally, we're going to build, test, and fix a real iOS version of this app on a real iOS device. I'll also be sharing the source code to this project in the next video as well. Let me know in the comments if you would have done anything differently, and check out the link to the full playlist in the description. And please hover over my face and click subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos in this series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.